This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/into the portal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Emma Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And welcome to another edition of Film Friday.
Yeah, we're back with, a super freaky film.
A Quiet Place this week, a 2018 flick directed by John Krasinski.
Believe it or not.
Very cool. We've had a huge Office binge lately, so it was kind of funny seeing him in this role.
I still just see Jim a lot. But
he's a lot more stoic.
He's stoic, but you know all those glances that he'll give when he's done something bad or something, or he's like kind of like those big wide eyes. You get that in this movie
with the eyebrows that kind of go like, oh.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, before we get into this whole Film Friday business, though, we had a little bit of a funny thing we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we did. And do you have that guy's name pulled up, too? Because I want to give him a shout-out.
Oh, I can do that.
But we're doing this Coffee Gator contest right now. Mm-hmm. And so we're asking questions on our regular Sunday released episodes from past episodes. It's like a trivia. So you guys can hop on and enter your answers on our website. Well, our first question was...
on the Mongolian death worm.
On the Mongolian death worm was, what was the plant that the Mongolian death worm consumed that aided in its ability to produce its venom, right? And of course, it was all over our notes. Wow. This plant.
It was very present when I went back, and it was funny because that was one of our first. It was episode 5.
Yeah.
So we weren't even using normally we'll use Google Docs so we can coordinate that way. But we weren't even doing that at that point. And so I guess I had my own notes in front of me and you had yours. And somehow that just got glossed right over. Yep. And unless we mentioned it further along and I didn't quite catch it. But as far as the notes are concerned, it was up front and center in page 2. So it should have been mentioned pretty early on. And so
we missed it.
Thank you to Zach B for just pointing that out.
Yes.
And we just, So we're actually going to extend the contest for another week. We're going to do 5 weeks. So we actually ask a legit question. But did we give the answer? Did you say the answer to the question? Did you say it? Did you say it?
I don't think I said it.
All right. Well, if you didn't say it, we're not going to say it anymore. And if you want to research it and answer
that's just
anyway,
it.
You should probably get 2 entries if you answer it correctly.
Sure, absolutely.
Because that's you taking the onus to do the own research. Because apparently we are dum-dums. And,
we are indeed.
Yeah.
We had some hardcores answer right away.
We did, yeah.
And so we were like, oh, okay, sweet.
As soon as I figured it out, I was like, whoa, okay, all right.
Anyway, so thanks for pointing that out. We love owning up to mistakes like that because it's hilarious.
Well, obviously.
It's just I thought we both burst out laughing when we got
For me, it was even funnier because I was just so happy about this contest. I was so stoked on it. And then I'm like, oh. It's just the balloon just went boom.
It was such a good question, too. It was a really good question. Yep. But, so, we're extending it by a week. Stay tuned for the Sunday release, and there'll be some juicy trivia in there for you.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's get into some more, slightly more serious stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a serious movie.
It's a really freaking, an all-encompassing movie that just, literally, this is what happened. We weren't even planning on doing this film this week. We actually had another one that was a listener-suggested film. And then I was really bored, 2 nights ago. And I was just cruising through Netflix. You know, you browse through a million movies before you actually find one or don't find one that you're going to watch. And I just saw that. And I was like, dang, we got Krasinski. And I didn't even know if it was directed by him at that point. But I just turned it on just to be whatever. If it catches my eye in the first 30 seconds, then maybe I'll just sit down and watch it. And of course, I was hooked in the first 10 seconds. I was like, this is so it just transports you. It's one of those films.
It is really cool.
And you weren't even set to watch a movie or anything. You were just doing your thing. And I was like, let's just watch this. Let's sit down and let's watch it.
And it was sweet.
It was so epic.
I will say, make sure, this is definitely one of those Film Fridays where you go watch the movie before you listen to this, because it was a 2018 release. It's a Netflix film. So if you don't have Netflix, just do the trial or something and watch it.
True. Or just go on YouTube. They always rent stuff on YouTube.
That's right. Yeah, rent it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to point that out. Lots of spoilers.
Definitely. All right, so let's get into like the central sort of theme of this film. It's almost harkening back to the beginning of film, right? In the sense that you do not get any words. You don't get a lot of dialogue. You don't get a lot of sound.
No.
And any sound that you do get is very intentional, seemingly. And so you get this theme of complete silence in this post-apocalyptic setting.
Right.
And there's the centerpiece of it all is this family, the Abbotts. And they're just like, every one of them, they seem so authentic. They could be an actual family. And like, I didn't know this when we were watching the film, but Emily Blunt and John Krasinski are actually married.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
They did such a good job. Like, it was so authentic and just,
Well, you'd hope so.
Exactly. Right. But even the kids, right? The kids were just seamless. The ability of, oh my gosh, especially the eldest, her name was Reagan.
Yes.
And she did a very good job.
Yeah.
I really liked her portrayal of like a deaf girl. That would be hard. Like, like...
It'd be hard, but it also, in the case of this family, obviously played to their advantage and probably their ability to survive. Because they were already adept at sign language.
Totally. So they had their method of communication. And then, but just from her perspective, could you imagine being in that world without any hearing?
That part about it is tough, yeah.
So on the flip side, Kate, you don't know if anything's hunting you, but you also don't know if you're making a sound.
Yeah.
And I loved in the very first scene when you get they're in the store, it's the kids. You just see the little pitter patter of this young little boy, seemingly by himself, because you don't see the parents until much later in the scene.
Yeah.
And then you get the one instance where he actually like almost drops that rocket on the ground, and she just saves it, and it's like this moment. And obviously she would never hear the effect, but she knows.
She just knows.
And you get that immediacy and that sort of fear right away, which really sets the tone.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you're put on edge right off the bat because it's the scenes in like a grocery store, right? Or like a pharmacy / grocery store.
Yeah.
And you're at that point, because it's the very first few moments, you don't know if they're just being quiet because they're out and about, almost like Walking Dead style. Like you got to be quiet because you're out on a mission, like you're doing a food run right now. But obviously we find out it's much more than just that. The other thing too is like, the little pitter patter of the kid, like running in the first scene. That is ballsy. I mean, you're letting like a 4-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever, just like, you trust him. Like, what if he like bumps into something and knocks a whole shelf over or something like that? You know what I mean?
Kids are a hazard. That is definitely a thing. Yeah, and you see all of them are barefoot because that's just the way it is, and their feet are all worn and everything and dirty because they're just like, whatever, you're not going to wear shoes. They have their method of travel, which they have the sand that's laid out in neat little pathways they can follow so that they don't have any vibrations of their footsteps or anything. Very clever, I thought. And that establishes the fact that they are survivors. They are like one of the few, and they've established themselves in this society. Yeah. And you do get, it seems immediate. Obviously you get, it's been 84 days. You see that in the, right before any of the opening scenes. So 84 days, that's what? That's like 3 months, not even.
Yeah.
So not even 3 months. Okay. So they've adjusted.
Right.
They have, it must be like a really, really fast what happened, because there's no one else around except for 5 families that you see in the countryside. Like they're the lights of their farmhouses. They're like their signal fires or whatever. So
clearly 84 days ago, like, and I think let's just say this out now because I know there's people that listen to these without watching beforehand. True. Like our friend Wes in Australia.
Hey Wes.
What's up, buddy? But so they essentially 84 like must have happened really quick. But the reason they have to be so quiet is because essentially the world they live in has been overrun by these
monsters.
Only can be described as monsters. And
they hunt by sound.
Like
you get that at the very first scene, right? When they walk out of the store and you see the newspapers, which are yellowed, but they're not to the extent where it's like, they're totally destroyed and everything. So they're quite immediate still. And you just see it's sound. You see the big... And all of the newspapers are very simple in this movie. I'll just say right away, like, the headlines and all that, which we can get into in a little bit here. But okay. So opening sequence. And then of course, so they leave, they're walking on their little footpath. They go quite a distance, right? They're following train tracks to their farm homestead. And you get... Oh, the poor little boy. So there's 5 in the family. There's 3 kids. One is quite young. He looks like he's, about 4 or 5?
Something like that, yeah.
4, 5, 6 kind of thing. And he like we mentioned in the opening scene, he goes to reach for this toy on the shelf. It drops. It's a rocket. And then his sister catches it and she like saves the day because obviously that would have been like death for them all.
Right.
And then in the end, John, as soon as John Krasinski's character, his name's Lee in the movie, the father, as soon as he sees that, it's almost like he's seen the monster, right? As soon as he locks onto it, he freezes. He's like, and then the mom sees it, freezes. Everyone sees it, freezes. He slowly walks over to him, turns it over, just ever so gingerly pulls out the batteries because he knows that it's just, that's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And so you get that right after the little boy, like he picked it up off the shelf and whatever, and he's talking about how this is how they're going to escape. He like tells his sister through sign language that rocket will go up and we'll get away.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. And then they leave the store. And the poor boy doesn't listen to his father, and he takes the toy with him.
Well, the daughter gives it back to him.
Exactly. So she's implicated in this. She's trying to be nice.
But she doesn't give him the batteries, though.
No.
She just gives him the toy.
Yeah. And
batteries
he
are
grabs the
there,
batteries.
grabs them. Resourceful little kid who grabs the batteries, knows which way to put them in. I mean, it's marked on there.
Resourceful? Idiot.
Well, I mean, no,
it's death.
dumb, but obviously, like, enough to, like, take the batteries, put them back in, you know what I mean? Like, and
Like, what was he thinking? I know he's 5, but it's like...
judgment,
But
obviously.
seriously, dude, at the very... Okay, so they get to this edge of the tracks where there's a bridge, and all the family, he's the very last to enter the bridge, and they're all walking, like, a good pace apart, right? Like, at least 2 meters, 3 meters, I would say.
Something like that.
And I think that's intentional because they probably want to space out their footing, so maybe they're not attracting, like, the vibrations, their foots aren't grouping together, maybe.
That makes sense.
I don't know if that... Like, especially if you're running, obviously they're walking quite lightly.
Especially across a bridge, too. It might create more of an echo or more of, vibration than on solid land, obviously, right?
That's true. And so they're all on the bridge, and then all you hear is just the...
Yep.
It's just the toy going off.
The look on what's John Krasinski's
Lee.
Lee
Is his
oh
name.
my god, the look on his face.
And then Emily Blunt's character, Evelyn, the mom, she just lets out a silent scream and covers her mouth, and it's like so raw. It's like giving me chills just thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
So crazy. But anyways, yeah, and so you get John just book it. At this point, he doesn't care if he's making any vibrations or any noise with his footsteps. He's just going for it. And the most important part about that scene, in my opinion, is the fact that it goes Lee, Evelyn, the boy, and then the girl. So the other boy's name is Marcus, the middle kid.
Yeah.
So Marcus, and then Reagan, the deaf girl, and then Bo. And Reagan can't hear the toy. So she is not alerted until everyone else turns around. Because she has no idea, and then she kind of clues in because John starts running. But if she had clued in, if she could hear, then she probably would have been able to save him. But at the same time, the fact that he was picked off distracted the thing from all the rest of them. So they could have potentially all died on that accident.
And so you get that first tiny glimpse of like what these creatures are that they're dealing with, but it's so fast that you don't and he kind of it's kind of almost, you don't even know if he slices them in half / grabs what has now been sliced in.
I don't even
taking
know.
it into the woods.
It's like a scythe like appendage on both hands.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is like we say they hunt by sound, like from what it said in the newspaper. Did it actually use the word hunt?
The tagline of the movie is "If they hear you, they hunt you."
Right.
So,
but is it hunting for food or is it hunting just to kill?
Or
because it seems as
is
if
it
it's
hunting
just,
because they can't stand any sound, and if you make sound, it kills their.
You never
brains.
see them consume anything throughout the movie, right? So it's got to just be this. I mean,
it's like a predator.
Obviously, we'll get into the commentary on noise pollution and the way societies run today.
I know, right?
But,
so they weren't really preachy about that, which I appreciated.
No, they weren't, but it was a silent commentary, which is very fitting because there's very little dialogue in the movie. It's called A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Right?
Very little dialogue. I thought what was important just to mention is the challenge of acting in a movie where there's basically, like, it's a 90-minute movie. There's about, I read online, there's about 90 lines of actual dialogue. And you don't actually hear any of them speak until about midway through the movie.
It's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Like, obviously they speak with their hands. It's a whole different dialogue.
I mean, the only few that popped in my mind that have been done well are like, I mean, Will Smith, I Am Legend by himself.
Oh, yeah.
Or like Castaway.
It's hard.
It's tough.
It's really tough. And especially for kids, it's all about your facial expression and how the audience needs to connect with you right away through that.
Definitely.
And then through what you're doing. I really think the family dynamic established that, really helped to establish that at least. So you know what I mean? Like, it's just like a very... Everyone knows who their character is, obviously. Like, you can see it's obvious that they're just trying to do their thing. And that was a brilliance of this movie, is the simplicity of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to get into the creatures a little bit.
Totally. Let's get into it.
So, excuse me. So, okay, first of all, we have no idea where they're from. We don't know what they are or where they're from. Those are my main two questions the entire movie, and of course we don't get that. No. But that's that's a benefit of the movie. I'm not going to criticize them for that.
It's not like a sci-fi movie per
It's
se.
not meant to be the one where it's like the trail of breadcrumbs to like the story of where they landed,
the origins
or this or whatever, right? It's just about it's just straight thriller, which is cool. I like that. But here's some details on the creatures, on the monsters. I found them to be relatively uncanny. In the sense that they had very human-esque form. So like four-limbed. Yeah. So they've got arms and legs, essentially.
Their head shape is very...
human-esque, or at least...
Humanoid,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So what else do I have down here? Like,
there was so just going back to your point about it being very human-like, the one scene where Emily Blunt is upstairs in the bathroom about to give birth, and it's hunting her, and it grabs the railing of the stairs, and it like kind of curls a hand-like thing around it, and I was like, that looks like a hand, that looks like a human, it looks very human-esque to me, and that was exactly, very uncanny. So it's like
creepy.
Uncanny as in like defined as the reflection of the self in the other,
right?
Which makes you basically the hair on
like Frankenstein,
back of
or like the Golem, or like whatever.
The uncanny. I don't even know. I feel like Frankenstein's just straight up the abject.
The abject.
That which is wholly other and must be eliminated to redefine the borders of the self, kind of thing.
I guess, but he's also been sort of the number one go-to reference when you're trying to describe the uncanny. I'm pretty sure that's on the back of the book, like in the...
I guess, yeah,
actual,
that's true.
like,
that's true.
But anyway, these things, so yeah, like four-limbed, but they're all crazy proportions, right? So it's like they have these... I honestly kind of peg them to be around 15 feet tall, crouched. Like they're crouched down, and they're almost like on like not like a gorilla, but kind of like where they have their arms are longer than their legs.
But it's able to fit in the basement, so it must be below 12 feet.
But it's like it can go into these. It's almost like
so you mean like stretched out? It'd be 15 feet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say crouched down. I guess I'm picturing the scene with Reagan when she can't hear it. Mm-hmm. The middle brother's hiding in the corn, and it's behind her. Yeah. Like it's a solid, at least 10 feet, and it's not standing upright. You know what I mean? Like perspective-wise. So like the point I'm trying to make doesn't matter. We're splitting hairs here. But like they're massive creatures, yet they can kind of contort their bodies. They're almost like a hybrid of like a praying mantis and a alien
and
hybrid.
Almost with like and almost like alien, but like almost like a machine, because like the head itself has like almost like multiple moving parts. It's like it reminds me of a Rubik's cube. That's something that like can reshape itself to maximize the hearing. Ooh. And then almost like when you see inside of it looks like subwoofers, like the actual like hearing appendages things.
Yes.
And so it kind of
is robotic.
The way exactly, and the way that it kind of moved around kind of reminded me of the way that cat moves its ears when it's trying to adjust to hear better. Another would be like a satellite dish rotating kind of thing, like, you know, that sort of
you're analogy. Right though too, but even when like their heads would open too, right? Yeah. So like and the pieces of the skull, if you want to call it that, would almost shift around like puzzle pieces in uniform kind of movements.
Ooh, you know what else reminds me of? The Earth's crust and plates moving 100%. Around and stuff. Like how it's like...
You know what? I don't want this to be too out of left field, but this reminds me a little bit of Annihilation in a weird way. Because it's like, here is a living whatever the hell it is, but possibly its anatomy is almost like how we would see as some sort of a weird amalgamous hybrid of like possibly you know what I mean? Like we just don't even understand how that can be a biological entity when it's like the skull separates and moves like puzzle pieces, and the ears are like you describe as almost robotic, but they're like clearly, I don't know, carbon based, I guess. Or,
they're organic and they bleed because she shoots it and
she blows its head off. Yeah,
which is very satisfying.
It is very satisfying. Indeed.
What else do we want to touch on here? I had some notes on like the farmstead and how like they're very clearly, like, this is a sweet setup they've got going on. And John Krasinski, as the director, he scoured the countryside looking for this thing. Like, he wanted the perfect, I think he settled on a New York setting. I can't remember. It was upstate, maybe Connecticut or whatever. Cool. I don't know. But he wanted to make it absolutely perfect. I don't know. But I didn't really... Yeah, we already kind of touched on everything here I had. The photos on the wall. Oh, that was interesting. So you get they've definitely moved. So they used to live in the home, like in the family farm home. They've moved into like the basement / the barn for obvious reasons. I guess it's just safer in the fact that it's quieter.
Yeah.
You don't have the creaking of the floorboards and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And the house itself was really cool because it was actually decorated with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski's family photos.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens a lot in movies though, right? And then you'll read about it after the fact and be like, oh, that was actually like their wedding photo or that was their whatever. I think that's cool when you pepper in a nice touch like that.
Oh, one other thing we didn't touch on with the actual creatures themselves that I wanted to mention.
What's that?
Okay, so in regards to Reagan, the deaf daughter, and her hearing aid that Lee, her dad, creates, and how it messes with them big time, and how when she gets within a certain radius, it starts acting up, and the frequency, it just gets crazy. And it is similar. It's almost like these creatures have an electromagnetic field, which might point to exactly that, more of a cyborg-esque type thing.
Yeah.
Where it has its own field. It messes with electricity. Every time it comes in, there's lights flickering and stuff. And I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting.
Definitely. It makes you wonder what his job was in the past. It helps that whole thing with him trying to build a hearing aid for her helps to define obviously the whole, like the characters as a whole too, right? Like they're all going through their struggle. He's trying to be the awesome dad and take care of everyone. She's trying to basically fill the roles that the middle child, the middle son is
shying away from.
Doesn't want to try to take the lead because he's terrified.
Yeah.
The mom is pregnant. I don't know if we've mentioned that.
We said she gave birth.
Right. So of course. So that's kind of her shtick, and she's like this super hardcore, like she hides from this creature, and she steps on a nail and doesn't make a sound, and she is going, like, her water breaks and she doesn't make a sound.
She's
like,
hardcore.
That is intense. Like,
that's crazy.
That was the most intense scene in the movie for me. Yeah, for sure.
The moment when the firecrackers start going off and she lets out one scream. She gets to let out one scream. That's all she's allowed.
That one satisfying scream.
Ooh, could you imagine? Yeah, her hardcoreness in this movie just really made it that much better. I loved how you don't get the bimbo or the buffoon or the fool. Everyone is very self-sustainable and very responsible, seemingly, like you said, they all have their pitfalls, they have the struggles that they're dealing with, but they're meant to, right? Like, those are the characters. Exactly, but they're all very believable and very strong. There's no cheese at all. There's no cheese, and with Emily Blunt, obviously, I don't think you could get that with her. Like, she's all class. Yeah. To go back to what you were saying though with the hearing aid. Yeah. I made this comment to you yesterday when we were talking about how effective, like, okay, that to me seemed like a maybe 1 point of, like, not that believable to me. So he's trying to develop these hearing aids using parts from radios and stuff like that to see if he can get his daughter to hear. Discovers this one, or he doesn't, she does, that frequency messes with the monsters. My question is, like, very quickly in the invasion of these creatures, the military would have figured that out. Right? Like, obviously, unless it was so fast. No, but there's but it wasn't. We know that. There's newspapers being printed. People are at the newspaper writing articles and printing the damn things, and then carrying them around saying it's sound. Yeah. Wow, amazing. We have sonic boom weapons and stuff. Like, there's all kinds of crazy sound technology that's used to disperse crowds and do this and that. You don't think they would have wonder if infrasound
tried out a couple of frequency options to try to like, that just seems a little far-fetched. That
was one of my questions. I wanted to ask you about that. The whole believability of this society, this post-apocalyptic society, the extent... Exactly. How fast this could have happened. Like, we've got an 84-day timeline from the initial sequence, and then we get a jump to about, I think it's day 472 is what they jump to from day 84. Yeah. So we've got a full year in between the death of that kid and then her developing pregnancy and all this kind of stuff. But again, so very fast, right? Yeah. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, the rebuttal to my own question, though, I'm thinking here now, I guess, is the idea that maybe they just started in crazy small numbers. Like there's like a couple hundred worldwide, and there's all these attacks happening, but they're obscure and nobody really knows what's going on. And then by the time anyone even has a chance of figuring it out, it's kind of too late, and now they've multiplied. But if we don't get to see how they multiply, if they multiply,
see any of that.
We don't know if they reproduce at all.
It's not really about the creatures, really. Hey, like they are a big part of the plot.
Well, they're a defining. Yeah, they are.
But we don't get any of their biology, any of their behaviors. All we see is their hunting behavior.
Yeah,
that's it.
Right. Which is so frustrating because it's just like I just want to like that's the
cryptozoological sort of
and the alien interest in aliens and whatever else, right? Like you want to know where these things are from. They almost have a element of the Stranger Things interdimensional type creature. Like they very much were reminiscent of those dog-like monsters from Stranger Things.
Yeah.
With the faces that open up into the full 360
it's like a
degree.
Flower.
Yeah, something like that.
Doesn't it remind you of the carnivorous plants we covered in the many?
Yes, it does, actually. Yeah.
One other sort of noteworthy thing I wanted to touch on was Krasinski himself and the idea that he directed this. He helped write it. It was him and two others. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. But yeah, not his first directorship. I remember a few years ago I actually watched a brief interviews with Hideous Men, and the only reason I watched it was because I knew he had directed it, and because Benjamin Gibbard from the frontman for Death Cab for Cutie was in it.
No way.
Yeah, and I think some other people were too, but I can't remember. But it was kind of a weird movie. I don't remember. I have to watch it.
So he redeemed himself with A Quiet Place.
He was effing panicking when they were going to the world premiere, apparently, like him and Blunt, like they were driving there together, and like he was just like, he didn't even know, like it was apparently the most nervous he's ever been for any premiere of anything that he's done.
That's your directorial. That's a big one.
Well, it's not his directorial debut,
no,
but it's just him and his wife together, and they literally poured their heart and souls into this thing. Like it was all them,
and they're famous at this point, so you got to do a good one, right? Like back in his first one, it wasn't as important. I mean, he's dating. He's married to Emily Blunt. I mean, you got.
I thought it was really cute though. They had this little this little story about how they were in the car, and he just didn't even know what to do. Like he was just like whatever, and she's like, you know what, just focus on one thing that you would like to see as an outcome of tonight. Or whatever, I can't remember how she phrased it exactly, but he was like, you know, it would be nice if people clapped. That's all he thought to him. So it would be really nice if people clapped.
I can totally feel that.
That just really brings home Krasinski as a person to me, because he just seems so honest. Like, you know, just very authentic, very whatever, like, you know, salt of the earth. His mom and dad, like his mom, I think his dad was a doctor and his mom was a teacher or something like that. So it's just very wholesome upbringing.
That's cool.
Grounded. So he kind of honestly thinks of his fame as like the almost craziest mistake ever kind of thing. Right. Not mistake, but you know what I mean? Just like the craziest mishap that him landing that role as Jim is essentially what launched his career. Yeah.
He doesn't have that crazy celebrity face. Like that's what it is for me. It's his face. Like you look at him, you're like, you might not be a normal guy, but I think you see him like a normal guy. Like he doesn't look like Tom Cruise or someone that's just like
he doesn't look shady or seedy or anything.
You know, you lost a few screws along the way.
He definitely lost more than a few.
Yeah.
But for this film in particular, like Krasinski noted, like he was studying a lot of horror films, and he really focused in on sound, which makes a lot of sense for this film. And every single like music cue, tension beat, jump scare, all of that just is what he was focusing on and just paying attention to a lot. Yeah. And he in particular noted that There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men were heavily influenced his development of this film and the sound that he used. And he just noted the idea that they went quiet in certain scenes, and that there was a power to that, a confidence that I wanted to put into the movie. That was a quote from him. But I think he accomplished that. Absolutely. I think he really did.
No Country for Old Men that's really cool that he watched that as a reference and influence for this movie, because that makes perfect sense. Like that movie is like
too,
and obviously and both of those are directed by Coen Brother movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So would you recommend this movie? I mean, do you have anything else you wanted to touch on here? Okay, ultimately here, we can speculate on what the hell these things are.
True.
I mean, interdimensional?
I don't Actually, yeah, that makes more sense to me. I don't really like the extraterrestrial hypothesis because I like the idea that, like we said, like they might have had some inferences like sound pollution of human populations and whatever, but they weren't preachy about it or overt about it at all.
No.
But that could have been a huge part. What if these things are exactly that? Creatures lurking in a periphery dimension that can kind of float into our world, maybe not, and then they manage to make the leap and they
Don't like sound.
all of a sudden just maybe there is nothing like the sound that exists in our plane in their plane. So therefore it was like this super abrupt, like just driving them crazy essentially. And they're in the, maybe this could explain, this is an alternative idea to explain the idea that the military wasn't able to address it properly, is like they were honestly like maybe hidden in the deepest crevices of the world, and then the speed of them and the size, they're so fast that they could just come out of nowhere seemingly and then just descend back into wherever depths of silence they came from.
The depths of the earth.
What if they're not even existing in the world? What if they are just like jumping through a portal and getting to another world with their...
Well, that's very Stranger Things-esque or something like that, and fits our show very well, obviously, into the
They always come out of the woods, so...
The only extraterrestrial explanation for me would be reminiscent of something like The Thing, where these things were dropped off or an accident, like on something lodged in the ice, kind of similar to The Thing or something like that.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
And that they were unleashed when they, by accident, potentially.
Yeah.
You know, I mean...
Or one planet's just trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, right? I mean, seriously. They actually are
like
very
Noah's
similar
Ark.
in a lot of ways to Alien, like the alien from Alien. With the heads, their
shape.
size, 4 limbs. They don't have the tail like the alien does in Alien. And these things have scythe arms. Like you got to wonder what those are for, beyond just slicing little boys in half that happen to turn on a rocket ship. You know what I mean? Like, what would that be for from like a biodiversity perspective, right? Like, is that for cutting down your wheat fields when you're in your
Perhaps.
regular dimension, not attacking sound? Like, I don't...
Wait, we could enslave these things and they could just be our farmers.
Perfect. They could just replace farm equipment for sure. And then they don't seem to eat anything, so you won't have to fuel them.
Apparently
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend this movie, though. I'm glad you pulled it up.
Me too.
It's it only runs 190 minutes. Like, it runs really fast.
90 minutes.
Or sorry, 190 minutes.
It's really brief.
An hour and a half.
And you know what? They could have tacked on an extra 20 minutes because I would have loved to see more of them just taking down these things.
They leave you one more for sure. They end it with like the cocking of the shotgun, which was awesome. Like,
So
that's
epic.
a great way to end it. Another point here that we haven't touched on: animals. You see any in this movie?
Oh yeah, I had that written down somewhere here, but no, the only animal we ever saw was raccoons, and they get quickly wiped out. Because that was on my point with like the whole farmstead,
Right.
and how they're very well established. They've got fish,
Yeah.
like they got the little like catchers for the fish. They've got their fields full of crops, but we don't see them hunt. Because you can't use a gun, presumably.
I mean, arrow would be your only option.
Arrow, yeah, I guess.
Crossbow.
But you don't see them eat meat ever. You don't even see them have a meal together, really.
You don't see any eating in this movie. There's no transition scenes. They don't waste time on transition scenes where there's things like that, where you can use those scenes to build tension or show certain things. Like The Witch used that a lot and things like that, right? Like where they're sitting at the table, or there's just, you show the facial expression just for showing this facial expression. You didn't really need to do that in this movie necessarily. I thought there could have been one scene added maybe where there was something like that, some sort of a transition where you really accentuate the beauty of like the landscape that they're shooting in, which they did, but maybe where it's almost like a sunset and you see like a doe or something. Like where you see like one buck, like that's just like this.
You see it get wiped out.
No, but like it's or not even though. Like it's this stoic thing that is relatively silent that manages to survive.
Well, that's just it. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Just like you're surviving.
Deer and elk and moose, like they're all fairly silent,
Cougar,
except when
bear,
they're calling.
I mean, they're
like, you know, when they have like their mating call or something.
Right. A couple polar bears gang up on one of these things.
But yeah,
they
you
might not
do
be so
see. Sorry, I'm just gonna move on from that. You do see exactly just the one raccoon, 2 raccoons, it's a pair of them, and then you just see it get quickly just snatched. So it's like, wait a second, where the hell did these raccoons come from? And
hiding around.
were they in the barn? That's kind of dangerous for the family. Hey, if they had attracted anything.
Yeah, what if a bird flies in and starts singing a song, and you're screwed? I mean, yeah, no, it's a world that would put you on edge. more so than just hiding from zombies or something like that. Like this would be scarier in my opinion.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, on that note, I think that concludes our Film Friday.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for listening. And do we know what we're doing next week?
Yeah, we're doing The Reanimator.
Ooh.
And I believe it was it Heath that suggested that one? I have to go back in the notes and look.
Okay. Well, you'll get a shout out next week if that was you, whoever you are. But looking forward to it. And as usual, oh my God. You finish this off.
As usual, we will see you on Sunday. Well, we won't see you, but you'll be hearing from us.
Yeah. We got a juicy one. So until then.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.